All right, here we are with alumni Craig Beissel. Craig, we got a lot to talk about, and I know as a Beissel, you guys hate to talk, so I know this is going to be a little bit boring here, but no, so let's begin this by hearing about how you got into wrestling. I know some people, their families are big into wrestling, and they come from a long line of wrestlers, and some people are the complete opposites. Like I said, let's hear about how you got into wrestling, and then let's get a recap of your high school wrestling career.
Sure. I got going into wrestling not until 5th grade, which is in today's world is some would consider it a little bit late, but that was probably one of the first times it was ever really offered. It was that the elementary program that we would get bused or we had to drive to the middle school at the time. And it was just a 2-week little deal. And that's all that we really had to offer for wrestling at that time was, I think it was 3rd through 5th grade. And we would just wrestle for 2 weeks and that was it. We'd had nothing else provided to us that we could go out, whether it was freestyle or Greco. It just wasn't there. And then I got into middle school in the 6th grade, and I went out for football. And when I went out for football, I was a lightweight at a ripe old 70 pounds. And of course, Mr. White was my coach, and he knew that I was in the elementary program, and he made sure when the football season was over that I was coming out for wrestling. And to be honest with that, I probably hadn't given it any thought at the time. But Mr. White pulled me aside and made sure I was going to do something else, do another sport. And sure enough, I went out for wrestling, and kind of the rest from there is pretty much history. Wrestled all through my middle school, got into freestyle and Greco a little bit more in 8th grade, 9th grade. Hastings really didn't do much with freestyle and Greco way back then. There were a couple tournaments early on that we could have went to, but we really didn't have the coaching and the knowledge of what freestyle and Greco was. It's gotten extremely big now with how much Hastings has grown with it. I probably didn't get more serious with freestyle and Greco until my 8th grade, 9th grade year, and by then it's almost too late. But I was I like to think I held my own. Went to quite a few tournaments. I qualified for junior nationals camp. I went to state in freestyle and Greco, and so that was fun. And now, of course, we're talking about that because of the Fargo Nationals going on. So back to the high school talk. My freshman year was I was the 103 pounder with a team of probably all juniors and seniors, and that was Mr. Vite's first year as head wrestling coach, and that was probably my toughest year on the mat and in that practice room. Mr. Vite came aboard, guns a blazing. We had morning practices, we had afternoon practices. We weren't out of there till 5:30, 6 o'clock
Mhm.
at night, and there was little Craig Beissel looking for rides to get to practice. My parents worked, so they could never really give me a ride. It I learned a lot. I gained a lot of, experience being the smallest guy in the team. I never really my freshman year, I think I weighed 95, 100 pounds, so I didn't cut weight that year. Going into my sophomore year, team of course, still on varsity, big 112 pounder. I was always I always considered myself an average wrestler on an outstanding team. I never really stood out that much. I enjoyed the team aspect of it. I went on junior wrestled varsity. I think I my total career, I might have wrestled 1 or 2 JV matches when I, needed some tuning in, if you will. My senior year, I ended up being the captain of the team, which was pretty cool. I was all conference. Never made it to state. Back then, we only had 2 classes. We had full 15, 16-man brackets in the regions, and they took the top 2 to go to state. I was always typically in the top 5, but never made it to state, but I learned a lot through wrestling, and wrestling shaped my life. I wouldn't be the person I am today without wrestling and what it did for me and what it's provided for me with my attitude and my work ethic and my competitive nature. It's really it's really molded my life, and at this point, I'm probably rambling. I could keep talking, but if you wanna ask another question, go right
Yeah.
ahead.
No, my next thing actually was then going to be about your brother Chaz.
For
Um,
sure.
did he get into wrestling very similar to you with that free program in the elementary school or the kind of later middle school? Or you being his older brother, did you really just say, hey buddy, you're going to do this? Little guys like us, this is the only place for us. And Mr. Vi really knew him then from you and got him into wrestling, or how did it look
Y
like for you
y
guys?
Funny story, where I'll date myself with Louis Clavel. He ended up giving me a wrestling mat we had in our basement, and I don't remember what year it was, but I don't even think my brother stepped into a wrestling room or real practice. His first tournament was him and I in our basement. I taught him a double leg, a stand up, and a half Nelson. And we got his shorts on, his tennis shoes, and his t-shirt. And I think his first tournament was Craig Beissel, his head coach in the corner. And those were the three moves we went to that tournament with. And I don't remember how he did or how I did or whatever, but that was his first experience. And then of course from there he followed along and got into the program much like myself and came up through the ranks as well.
Perfect. And now, once again, piggybacking off of that as well, Blake and Trey are obviously, Blake is graduated. He's well into his college career. Trey's got 1 year left of high school. Ellie, I feel like she's going to start getting into wrestling pretty soon here as well. So the Beissel legacy continues here at Hastings High School, which is pretty cool to see what you started way back in the day. It's still going on right now.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I take a lot of pride in my last name. When I Anytime I'm at a wrestling event or I'm wrestling or whatever, I'll always make sure that when I introduce myself, it's Craig Beissel, so that I gain that respect right away. But it's through my nephews and my brother and our family, more so our nephews. So it's great to see those guys succeed and sharing their successes and having people come up to me. I think there was one time where I'm consistently asked if Blake and Trey are my boys, and I think one time I probably just replied, said yes. It was a bunch of people around. I'm like, you know what, fine, let's just call it yes. And then I walked away or whatever. That was it. But usually, I should say usually, I do correct people and say, yeah, they're my nephews. And like I said, that seems to gain me a little bit respect, especially when it comes to roughing. They hear that name and they're like, okay, allegedly he knows what he's doing now, so we better respect him.
That's awesome. So earlier you mentioned Mr. Veit, and obviously he's been in Hastings for over 30 years now, and it really got the Hastings wrestling program on the map and going and the machine rolling here. So I would love to hear about lessons that people learned. And you named already a lot of great things that wrestling has taught you in your life. But if you could think about a couple different things that wrestling has taught you that you really apply to your daily life and your as a father, as a husband, as working as at a bank, or something specific, Mr. Veit really instilled in you at an early age. Let's hear about that.
You know, the biggest thing he probably taught us is you can be the best wrestler on that mat. You can be the strongest wrestler. You can have all these accolades, all these trophies. But as soon as you step off that mat and you become disrespectful or you become quote unquote naughty, your success on the mat is null and void. When we were in high school, there were times where Mr. Veit knew our grades before we even did. And we paid the price if we weren't making the cut. And so that's probably one of the biggest things he probably taught me is how people see you off the mat is the people remember that. They'll see you if you're being disrespectful or if you're acting out, being unprofessional, unsportsmanlike. That's to me, and that's my opinion as well, is that if I see you're like that type of person off the mat, you're nothing. And I don't know if that's aggressive, but uh, that's always been instilled in me is you can be the best worker, you can be the best employee, or you can be whatever to your clients or whatever. But as soon as you step off and you become that disrespectful person, you're nothing.
Perfect. So one of the cool things about you recently, there's a lot of cool things about you, Craig, but one of the cool things recently is that you got back into giving back to wrestling in as a referee. So let's hear about that, why you got back into it, how that passion for wrestling reignited in your life. And once again, how you got into wrestling, who got you into it. And then let's really hear about how are you're treated in the wrestling community as well, how well they train you up and different things that all go into wrestling. So let's hear about that piece of your life.
Sure. I actually, when I graduated high school, I went to St. Cloud and I didn't wrestle at St. Cloud. I did end up being a head coach for a junior high team up there. So I did stick with wrestling a little bit after high school. That gave me quite a bit of experience, even with the roughing. And then the other thing, as soon as I graduated high school, I always typically came back and I reffed that Livingston tournament. And then I started a family and had daughters, and my life became busy with work and everything. And my job got me back into Hastings. It got me back into roughing the Livingston tournament. And I enjoyed that. To be honest with you, I don't do the roughing for the money. I do it for the fun. I do it for the community. I do it for the kids. Always in need of refs. The money is just there. It's great to have, but I don't do it for the money. I was actually Hastings was wrestling Farmington, what was it, 2, 3 years ago, and a gentleman by the name of Rod Frost, who is I guess I'd call him my boss maybe with the ref association. My brother introduced me to him at the Farmington Hastings wrestling match, and my brother happened to mention that I did some roughing, and Rod said, "You should come back and wrestle a little bit." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know if I wanna do that." And lo and behold, I'm like, "You know what? I'm enjoying this. I wanna get back in. My daughters are graduating from high school. I'm gonna be an empty nester. I might as well stay busy, otherwise I'll drive my wife nuts." And so I ended up getting into it, reffing, and basically I just went in full boat. They give you the book. I had to take some tests, and of course I passed the test or whatever. And now I'm out on the mat and reffing JV matches, a bunch of middle school matches, and truth be told, last year was my second year, I'd call it, and Rod Frost and I were reffing in Hastings. I was the Hastings maybe Eden Prairie, and I forget who else was there. And there was, of course, I can't ref Hastings matches, but Rod came over to me and said, "You ready to ref your varsity match?" And I looked at him like, "Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, "Oh boy, here I go." And I'm like, I never feel as though I know all the rules. And there's always something that you're going to miss or something that you're not going to remember. And of course, that one thing is going to be that one thing that the coach in the corner knows and is going to be 100% right. And I'm going to be wrong. And it happens all the time. Us as refs, and this is just me talking, I'm not talking for all refs. I feel as though we can't always know everything. You think about if a dual meet comes down to a tie, then you go over to the scorebook and you're the ref and you have to figure out the criteria and remember, and go through and say, okay, most pins, most techs, most whatever. Okay, now this team wins. There's just so much that goes into refing that people don't realize and follow along. Some of the things that we're required to watch for, some of the things that we're doing. There's always something where there's something's going to be going on that's shared with us through the state high school league, and we have meetings and they'll say, "Hey, kids are doing this or whatever. We have to start focusing on this." And that could be something as simple as locking hands. And sure enough, you go out the next day and you're going to see more calls for locking hands or stalling or whatever. You can tell when we have meetings, I think, as coaches, when hey, they must have just had a meeting about stalling because maybe this ref isn't calling stalling, and maybe we just got reprimanded for calling stalling too much or whatever the case is. There's always different things going on that they want us to focus on or watch for. And you as a coach probably could tell sometimes in some of your matches where, okay, this is ridiculous. Chances are we probably just had a meeting that talked about stalling or something like that. But no, it's been awesome. I enjoy doing it. I don't, like I said, I don't do it for the money. I like to be around wrestling. It keeps me close. There's a lot of great coaches. I've gained a lot of friends through the wrestling circuit. It's funny to me that and maybe I shouldn't broadcast this, but there's literally refs out there that have never worn a wrestling shoe and even wrestled a match. And those are probably some of the best refs out there.
Mhm.
But no, I'm, I'm looking forward to this season. I'll probably get some more varsity matches this year. I just basically tell Rod Frost, wherever you need me, I'll go. I'm not in it to make money. I'm not in it to make sure I'm at the state tournament someday. If you think I'm good enough, I'll be there. I'll just be wherever you want me to be. And at the same time, I try to have fun, as much fun as I can, but while doing it.
For sure. A few things that you just talked about there. So obviously you were involved in wrestling right around college, and when you got back into town, stepped away for a little bit. And then obviously as you're getting back into it, you mentioned him a ton of times there, Rod Frost, and he's the head of the Gold Country Officials Association. Do you feel like they really trained you up pretty well and really worked with you and monitored you, and any questions you had that they always answered them and all that kind of stuff, and you felt
Oh,
you were really comfortable after a little bit there of roughing?
100%. The support I get from these refs is amazing. I'll have mentors, we'll have refs want us to do a better job. They'll just show up at a match. Some of these senior level refs that do the state tournament, they'll just randomly show up at a match that you're refing and help you out and answer questions and be there. And refs love it. These refs have been around for a while. They absolutely love it when I have a scenario or I had a scenario and I give them a call and say, "Hey, I had this happen last night. what would you do or what would have been the correct call. The camaraderie around these refs is amazing. We all want to do our best. We're all there for each other. We bounce scenarios off of each other. It's a great group of guys.
Perfect. Another thing that you mentioned here, Craig, was about having a busy schedule. Obviously, you talked about having 2 daughters. I'm sure you know the dance schedule and everything that goes into having girls is very busy. I'm in that same boat right now. But when it comes to your schedule, I know things are slowing down a little bit with your daughters going off to college. Talk about the schedule that refs have across the state, and is it close to where you can pretty much make your own schedule? Or obviously there's probably certain days like, hey, I can't make these X days, or I can't make Thursdays ever, but Friday, Saturday, I'm your guy. How's it go for people that do have busy schedules out there that want to get into roughing?
Great question, and it's extremely flexible. At the beginning of the year, we calendar goes around and we know dates that just simply don't work, whether your kid has practice or whatever. There's refs that just only ref on the weekends and all they're doing is tournaments. But so that gets kicked around. We can say, hey, there's third Thursday of the month, I have a meeting, I have a church meeting or whatever. I can't make any of those. And we put our name down. And then, of course, throughout the year, things open up. Rod gets asked to help out another association or somebody comes up for a ref where they can't make it a night. And so there's opportunities for us to jump in. It's extremely flexible, which is really nice. You can, in a roundabout way, you can work your own schedule in the sense that you can say, hey, I can do it every Saturday. I can do it every Friday. I can't do it Thursdays. Of course, Thursdays are a big night. So it's extremely flexible. You can do what you want. That's extremely nice. And the other nice thing too is that we don't travel very far. Rod knows where we live, so he typically doesn't make, unless we really want to. We're not being assigned St. Michael, Albertville, or whatever. However, if we wanted to go up there and the opportunity presented itself, I've done that a couple times just to go to St. Michael and see their girls program, for example. I've refed some of their stuff up there and get that experience, which is nice. Yeah, it's extremely flexible. And when you feel like you don't have much to do or whatever, you can always go out and I've always picked up extra opportunities as well.
Perfect. Last couple questions here on the reffing. Number one, I know Rod has talked about some kids that just graduated high school that aren't going to wrestle in college and they have got into reffing right away. So pretty neat deal where I think there's actually a kid that was in high school recently, maybe hurt or something was going along the lines where they got into reffing and was giving back to wrestling in a different way. Number one, there's, I guess maybe not a question, but different abilities at all times and different ages are always getting into reffing. So it's always something that's really cool. How can someone get into reffing? So who would they contact? What should they be looking out for? And how's that process start?
Good question. I guess the best thing to do would be to reach out to Rod Frost, and Rod's a great guy to work with and answer any of your questions. He's not the type of guy that is going to put you in an uncomfortable situation, in my opinion, where if you're really green and you got a lot to learn, he'll mentor you. He'll he'll find a mentor for you and place you on what he thinks on what his comfort level is. I think the individual you're talking about is a Farmington kid. In fact, I refed with him once before, and I think he was a junior or senior in high school. And there he was refing, and yeah, he was injured, but he wanted to continue on and give back. And he's roughing. He's actually pretty good. I think his dad refs as well too. So really, anyone can inquire about it. Give Rod Frost a call. I can even offer up his phone number, which I'm sure he'd be okay with. And on a side note, I, coming up with the Hastings wrestling tournament here towards the end of August, he's going to be on my golf team. Anyone who's listening from Hastings and might want to get into refing and want to be introduced to Mr. Frost, find me and my brother, and we'll introduce you to him, and they can have some conversations. But maybe I shouldn't share his phone number just in case you never know. But I can start it with that, and if anyone is interested, they can certainly reach out to me. They can find me. I'd be happy to put them in touch.
Perfect. Yeah, just to sum it up too, I think it's just such a cool program where when you get into it, and I know one thing too, maybe sidebar too, I listened to the Alan Josh podcast. I'm a
Oh,
big
sure.
fan of them. and they're always talking about sponsoring a ref. So a lot of the
Oh yeah,
donations that
right.
they get for their podcast, yeah, they help get the refs their uniforms, get them going, and really support them that way too. So financially, which is really cool. Just a really cool program that they do, supporting those people that are getting into refing for the first time. And then, and like you said too, the mentor program is pretty cool. Just to, like I said, sum it up a little bit, someone like Rod is never going to put a new official right onto the varsity mat. And obviously, as coaches, we don't want that. And as officials, you don't want to be swimming with the sharks right away, too. You got to start with the ninth grade level, start with the JV, really work your way up, JV tournaments, JV duels. And then, as you just talked about, slowly work your way into that varsity duel. So obviously, you feel comfortable and coaches and wrestlers feel comfortable with you, too, which is really important. And I think the other thing that you mentioned too, just to highlight it, is that mentor program. So obviously they send out other refs, they watch you. And one of the things that is really cool, obviously at some duels, we have two refs on the mat. So we have one official and then we have a rover. And that could be either way, right? So you might be the official on the mat and Rod could be the rover. And he's just telling you, hey, Craig, look out for this. Hey, make sure we're circling over here. Look for these couple things while you're reffing. Other way around too, you could be the rover and Rod could be the head official and really mentoring you that way and really showing you things that you need to be doing. As I was just saying, that mentor program is very important. Last thing with it too, obviously, when you're on the mat, sometimes have people in the crowd watching you, taking notes, and then giving back to you as well afterwards and saying, hey, I thought I missed this, or did you miss this? Or hey, when this is happening, look over here, and those kind of things that they're always trying to improve, just as coaches are, just as wrestlers are. Our refs are always trying to improve it, and they have a really good process in place of helping those refs improve. I think it's just really cool. You talked about all those things, but just a really cool summary of the things you talked about with their Gold Country program and probably refereeing across the state as well.
It's great. I would recommend anyone who has been a wrestler in high school or did some collegiate wrestling and they want to get back into it. This is a great way to do it. You learn so much and you actually become a better fan when you're not reffing. There's been so many times where I've been in the one thing I've enjoyed about it is sitting in the fans and watching a Hastings wrestling team wrestle and have some of the parents sit by me and start making calls for the ref or doing this or and I'm just sitting back there going, I bite my lip, I bite my lip. I'm like, just be quiet, Deborah. That ref was really right on that call. You're just simmer down. You're going to be fine. And then the other cool thing too is I'll be at home some night and I'll get a text message from a Hastings wrestling parent of last year. There was something going on. Then I don't know if it was a clash or whatever. And I had a couple of wrestling parents call me and say, hey, Craig, are you watching this? I'm like, yeah. What happened here? Then they didn't have any idea what the call was or why the call went this way and it went that way. And I felt important because I was able to explain to them, hey, here's why it happened. Here's why it was called. Hastings, whoever should just sit down. The ref made the right call. Everything's going to be fine. But no, it's a great camaraderie of guys that just want to get back to the sport and still be involved. I think it's great if you're looking for something to do on the side, you're an empty nester like myself, and you want to see what it's all about. Like I said, anyone can find me and reach out. It's it's been great, and like I said, I've gotten to know a lot of coaches and familiarizing myself back with the wrestling community and being able to follow a lot more. It's fun.
Perfect. Last thing here then for you, Craig, you just talked about being an empty nester. Let's just sum this up for I'm going to send this out to our alumni as well, put it out on Facebook for our wrestling community. Let's hear about your family life, what you do for a living. And I know you do a lot of civic things with the Rotary or different organizations here in Hastings. Once again, let's hear about your family life, where you're working, and all the civic things that you do for us.
Sure, and I'll try to keep that brief. I my wife is Michelle. She's from Apple Valley. I met her while going to St. Cloud. We've been married for 24 years. It'll be 25 years
God bless
next
her.
year, which yeah, I know, right?
Mhm.
That time has just flown. My oldest daughter, Kaylee, she will be starting her senior year in Eau Claire, and she's not actually going to be graduating early. She's getting a degree in finance. My younger daughter, Mackenzie, she finished her first year down at Mankato. She'll be starting her second year. And in fact, we're already talking about moving her back down there. Through the When they were all in high school, I was a dance dad. Dance was our life. 24/7. I enjoyed the heck out of it watching them dance. And in fact, I danced in some competitions and some recitals myself. But to be honest with you, I miss that part of it. Everyone talks about, oh, I bet you don't miss dance and the dance payments. And I'm like, I will take a dance payment any day over a tuition bill. Anyone who thinks that after dance or hockey or whatever expensive sport your kids are in, it doesn't get any cheaper. But no, we live in Farmington. I work now at Merchants Bank. I've been in the mortgage business ever since I graduated from St. Cloud State. Oh boy, 30 years, 25, 30 years ago. I just recently ended um, my my duty, if you will, as president of the Hastings Rotary Club. I'm a member of the Hastings Chamber. I'm an ambassador of the Hastings Chamber. Was president of our Farmington Snowmobile Club. I'm now secretary. I sit on my church's council at Farmington Lutheran Church. I have to stay busy. I I love it. I love helping people. Anytime I can give back and volunteer my time and my energy. A lot of times we look at our lives and we have it pretty good. And anytime I can give back or bring a smile to someone's face or help out, volunteer, do whatever, I take on every opportunity I can. Now, having said that, sometimes I get guilty. I can sometimes not say no just because I know that an organization needs help. But it's good. It's keeping me active, keep my mind going. It's a good life. I'll leave it at that. I don't deserve it some days, I feel.
Perfect. Craig, that's all the questions I got for you tonight. Last thing I always do in any of my podcasts or interviews, I just turn the microphone over to our guest. Anything I forgot to ask him, anything else you want to add in, any shout outs you want to give, the time is yours and you can go for it.
No, I don't think so. I think I took up quite a bit of time with sharing quite a bit of information at the beginning of this. You mentioned some questions you were going to ask, and I think you could have probably asked just one question, and I could have answered it all in just one big lump sum story. But no, I appreciate you taking the time and reaching out to me. I love doing things like this, and like I said, anytime I can give back or help someone out, I love to do that. I appreciate you reaching out to me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be asked to do this. I'll throw that out there. I thank you so much for allowing me to come on your show and do this. It's awesome. It's cool.
Perfect. Thanks, Craig.
You bet. Take care, sir.